With summer grilling season coming on and fresh fruits and vegetables, here are some great tips. We just happened to have Rachel Ray on TV in studio while we were working on some other projects. Here's some great tips for you.
For a 30-minute crowd pleaser, here's a tip. Everybody loves ramen.
When it's thickening, it's done. Today is a show that we call a tip-off. That means we pack the show with tons of experts about a million different things, and they're going to share with you guys some of their best tips and tricks. And we're starting off with two of our favorite pros because they're foodie pros. This is what you guys need to know before you go to the grocery store next time. In this corner, beginning our tip-off, is America's meat heart. I didn't write that. I'm just saying. No, we love him. He's been a friend of our show for a long time. He's a master butcher. He's the author of The Everyday Meat Guide. I actually wrote a blurb for that book. It's so good. It is such a great go-to for your kitchen. Anyway, this is our dear friend, Ray Venezia.
I didn't write that either, but
Here to take on his tips is a woman that's going to help you pick your perfect produce. The owner of one of New York's oldest gourmet markets. If you are a New Yorker, you certainly know Cinderella. This is Helen. All right, Helen. All right. Now, normally it's ladies first, but are we starting with Ray because you're standing on that far end?
we are.
All right, Ray.
I'm gonna
Take it away, baby.
All right, first and foremost, when it comes to the meat, no matter what the name of the meat is, whether they call it a roast, a steak, I don't care the name, the most important thing is to know where it's coming from on the animal to determine the method of cooking that's going to be the best to have the most flavor
So
and
you're going to
tenderness.
teach everyone, you're going to school them in how to cook wherever the meat comes from on the
Yes. Okay, like you start with the front, the chuck. The front of the animal is the working muscles, the chuck, the brisket, the plate, right? These are the working muscles, okay? The working muscles, a lot of connective tissue. You want low heat, moist, long, penetrating heat to cook to make it tender and juicy and flavorful. You don't want to cook this fast, it'll just be tough.
Chuck is what you cube up when you make stew. Stew is a slow cooking thing. Everybody knows how to make a brisket, right? Low and slow. This is the braising meats, I would
Yes,
say.
you want to braise. These are the cuts you definitely want to braise. And like I said, it doesn't matter what they call it. They call it a steak. It doesn't mean you throw it on the grill. You want it cooked that way, and it'll always come out right, no matter what flavor you want to put with it.
Okay.
Then you go into the middle, the rib, the short loin, okay, the middle cuts, right, and the sirloin. These are all for high, dry heat cooking. It starts getting leaner as you go across, so you don't want to do that slow cooking. It'll end up tough. There's not enough marbling in it to hold it, so you want to do high, dry heat. Okay? And that's what will do best for these cuts. Your porterhouse steak, T-bone, your sirloin steak, your rib steaks, your rib roast, those are the things you want to do that way. Then you come to the back of the animal, the round, where the flank is, and the shank. This is the leanest part of the animal. Largest muscles, leanest part. Again, high, dry heat. There's a lot of heavy fat cover that'll penetrate into it. And that's how that breaks down. Like I said, it doesn't matter what flavor you want to put to it. If you use the right cooking method, it'll always come out flavorful and tender.
Nice work. Good job, Ray. All right, my darling, you're up next. What do you got for us?
Okay, so we're going to teach you how to store your produce. And so it's really important for you to know when you go grocery shopping, you don't just take it and all throw everything into the refrigerator in the same drawer. Fruit and produce produce something called ethylene. Okay, and so ethylene is going to make other produce spoil. And so things that have a lot of ethylene when they're ripening are bananas and tomatoes, which should never be kept in the refrigerator.
Yeah, and bananas too. They'll darken in the refrigerator. My
100.
sister throws them in the freezer though when they're overripe.
And
that's
make
not bad.
smoothies.
Yes, for smoothies or even for banana bread or baking.
Easy.
Not a bad,
Good
not
to
a bad
defrost,
thing.
and it's definitely a way to save. So
What are your thoughts on onions?
onions should be they should be out of the refrigerator
Out of
as
the
well.
refrigerator
Same
as
thing with
well.
potatoes, and in a darker area. So what we tend to do is we kind of throw everything on the counter,
Right.
and what happens is we put something like this together, and the ethylene that gets produced out of these are going to start to rot the rest of boat. Correct. So we keep them separate.
This is cool, dark place. My mom never used a dishwasher in her life, and all the places we rented or that we would move into had a dishwasher. My mother used to keep the onions and the potatoes in the dishwasher.
So we want to keep them away from our leafy greens especially. So apples produce a lot of ethylene as well. So if you keep these guys together, they're going to make all your greens wilt quickly.
So keep them in a separate drawer if you want to chill your wax.
Exactly, 100%. And so same thing with mushrooms. If you keep these vegetables or fruits together, other fruits that'll do this like avocados, peaches, plums, they all ripen. So we want to keep these beautiful other veggies away from things that produce a lot of ethylene to make your produce last longer.
And I also keep my mushrooms, I take them out of the plastic bags that many produce departments have, and I keep them in paper so there's a little more air going into them, so they don't get too gummy.
They'll get gummy fast.
Thank you, my girl. All right, moving on down the line, back to Ray.
Hey, Rachel, temperature. A lot of people still don't put enough thought into what the temperature is. It not only will make the meat healthier for you to eat, but to retain the most flavor in the meat and not overcook and over dry, you want to know the temperatures. Okay, so when it comes to ground beef, ground meat, you're talking 160. When you're talking poultry, you're talking 165. The big key, again, to this day, how many years we're doing this, Rachel? Pork people still don't understand. You can have a pink blush, so it's like 145
It's the
to
most
160.
overcooked thing I think that people prepare frequently are pork chops. And pork roast and pork tenderloin.
I love pork because it is so flavorful when you do it right and you don't overcook
It's
it.
juicy
It's
when you
got
cook
such
it to
flavor to it. It's one of the most flavorful meats.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is the other white meat. You can get pork that is as lean as any other, right?
Absolutely, and they're raised a lot healthier today than they ever were.
That's really important to know your numbers. Know your numbers.
And then, of course, the beef, lamb, and veal is 125 to 160,
Depending on how you like it, right.
Okay, because again, that you can have that rare and still be healthy and still eat because everything on the surface will
Exactly.
get it. So it does pay to have the meat thermometer.
Moving right along, what are we going to talk about next? Let me guess. It does have anything to do with berries?
It does.
It does.
So we're going to teach you how to wash berries properly. Okay, so berries grow close to the ground, especially strawberries. They have super porous skin, and what happens when we don't wash them properly, they'll get moldy quickly, and we want to prevent that from happening. So first you want to rinse them off from any excess dirt, and then what you want to do is you want to wash them in or dip them in 1 part white vinegar and 3 parts water.
Really good tip.
So we're going to put this in a colander like this, so that way we can dip it. You don't want to soak it, okay? And I think we may want to. Okay, we're going to mix those together. So we want to dip them. We don't want to
Take them for a little baby swim.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of swirl them around. We don't want to soak them. The soaking is going to get the vinegar flavor in that porous skin. And then we're going to just take them after they're dipped, and you're going to get them back in the fridge.
Fantastic. Then pop them back in the fridge. Take it for a little spin. I'm gonna get my antioxidants in, take some fruit on down the line while Ray's talking. What are you talking next, Ray?
Again, we're going to talk about freezer wrapping.
Okay.
Fresh meat. To keep the most flavor and stuff in your meat, you want it fresh, okay? So a lot of people don't understand when you buy a package of meat at the store, if you're buying ground beef because of that process, if you're not using it that day, freeze it. Do not let it sit in your refrigerator. Fresh meat, if you buy a fresh piece of meat, if you're not going to use it within 24 hours, you want to freeze it.
Wow.
Because it's just going to lose a lot of moisture. Really? Because as soon as you cut a piece of meat, it starts losing its natural moisture.
Okay.
The longer it sits, that's why when it sits in your refrigerator, it gets bloodier and bloodier. You're losing a lot of the flavors. It's just pouring out of the meat. So you want to freeze it at its freshest point. Then when it comes to freezer wrapping, again, we always talk about the packaging in a supermarket is not good for wrapping, for freezer. It's not heavy enough. You want a heavy enough
You have to protect
wrapping
from the cold.
to protect from the cold. And the other thing is,
Because it'll burn the meat and give it freezer burn. If you think about it, that's what's happening.
Absolutely.
You're literally burning the meat itself.
the other thing about it is, a lot of times I bought pork chops because you'll find them shingled like that in the package. And a lot of people take them out of the package, put it right in the freezer paper. Well, part of this process is you don't want to do it that way. You want to lay them flat. The reason you want to lay them exactly, because it's not just protecting from the cold, but you want as much air out of the package as you can get.
Boy, I bet you his freezer's a beaut. Right? All that meat all stacked up, neatly packaged.
So then after you freezer wrap, you want to put it in a bag, a Ziploc bag, the plastic freezer bags. And don't forget, have a Sharpie with you. Make sure to date it label it what it is and how many pieces you have in it, so that you don't have to tear your freezer apart.
How long do you keep your meats in the freezer?
If you wrap it perfectly like this, 6 to 8 months.
6 to 8 months.
And it will
right.
stay perfectly good. And again, you'd want to flatten this out, get all the air out, then seal the bag. Because that extra air will crystallize the moisture from the meat, and you get that freezer burn.
Yep, and also,
Then you mark
don't
and
just
label.
date it, but label what it is, right? You don't want to have to unwrap it and say, oh yeah, that was a pork chop.
3 pork
Okay,
chops.
what do we got next? We're hip-hopping on down the line.
We're gonna teach you how to pick a pineapple. And so, when you go into the grocery store and you see a pineapple that's really green like this, it is not ready to eat, okay? And so, a couple of ways that you can know when a pineapple is perfect is by its color, and these come out really easy when they're
leaves
ready.
at the top, right.
So if they come out too quickly like this, and they look this dark orange, this is overripe.
That's such a good tip. Orange, no good.
Right.
It's like a caution cone.
Exactly.
Don't buy that pineapple.
So, and if they don't have good ones, buy a green one and ripen it at home.
Gotcha. All right, Ray, come on down.
All right. Last but not least, Rachel, against the grain. A phrase everybody's always heard, but really doesn't understand what it actually means. We do not have cutting teeth. So no matter how you cook the meat, you're not going to be tender if you don't cut it against the grain, where you shorten the fibers so that when we mash down, it comes apart. Now here's a flank steak. You can see the lines, and you want to go against that. And when you go against it, you're not going to see lines. You're going to see little crisscrosses. Okay? That means when it cooks, it'll come apart when you mash down on it. The other one I brought because people really don't pay attention to against the grain when it comes to their poultry.
That's true.
And it's extremely important, especially the breast. If it's tough, they'll blame the cook of the chicken. Right? Not the way it was sliced. So again, you want to see the way the lines on the breast are running, the way you see this here. And then you're going to slice against it so that you get a beautiful slice that's going to come apart when it eats. Even though it's going to be smaller than you're used to, but that's against the grain. It'll be much more tender when you eat it.
That's a great point. A lot of people don't get really confused, especially when it comes to chicken, right? All right, let's bring it on with the eggplant.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to pick squash, okay? And so some people would say bigger is better when it comes to squash. That is not a true statement. So the smaller the squash, actually the more tender it will be. And so these guys are a little bit on the bigger side. And these, what I wanted to show is that these are a little dehydrated. They're super bendy and they shouldn't be. And you should always look at the tips of them, the stems. As they're old, they're dry. The stems are going to be dry. And if they're nice and ripe, look, you see some water coming out?
Right. There's
that's
moisture left.
There's
The
moisture
stem
left, so
cut.
they'll be nice and wet when you go into the grocery store. If you can do that, you know that they're fresh, they're firm, and that's how you cook it.
It's important for eggplant too.
Absolutely. Heavy.
We were both just saying when you're shopping for eggplant, you want it to be really heavy. It should not be light and spongy. It should be heavy and dense. Otherwise, when you cut it open, it's going to be black and dried out.
Exactly. 100%.
Nicely done.
All right. Thank you.
Nicely done. Up next, I got another good friend of our show. We're going to talk makeup with...
There you go. And as always, here at Ballville E-Z Shop, we truly appreciate our great customers. Thanks for shopping with us, and ask us about some of these tips if you have questions.